Director General for Health. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of the Committee of Health of the Senate. I was privileged, Mr. Speaker, to sit in a joint sitting with members of the National Assembly that undertook this very, very important process. And Mr. Speaker, we must applaud the 2010 Constitution that has made the accountability card for those who want to serve in the public to be very high. Mr. Speaker, we must thank those who sent memoranda to the committee. I specifically want to acknowledge and thank Dr. Wahome, Mr. Speaker, who brought more than, I believe, 500-page memorandum raising an objection on the suitability of Dr. Patrick Amoth. Mr. Speaker, even though the committee did not agree with the issues that were raised by Dr. Wahome, it demonstrated to the public that Parliament undertakes a process that is fair, a process that is open to the public, a process that affords Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, an opportunity to raise any objection they have on the suitability of a candidate, provided, Mr. Speaker, the memorandum and the reasons raised, Mr. Speaker, can demonstrate that such a candidate is not suitable. On this particular instance, Mr. Speaker, though Dr. Wahome's objection did not carry the day, Mr. Speaker, he got a hearing. I remember us hearing him for more than 1.5 hours, Mr. Speaker, as he took us through what he thought was some omissions by Dr. Amoth when he served in this position in an acting capacity during the time when this country was going through COVID. So I want to encourage the likes of Dr. Wahome that even though, Mr. Speaker, his reservations do not carry the day, Mr. Speaker, that should not discourage any Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. We receive the memorandum, we wait. If we are convinced that the nominee is not suitable, that will carry the day. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to also make a comment that we need to relook at the provisions of the Public Appointment Parliamentary Approval Act, a law that was introduced before this House by my good friend Senator Mungatana, I believe in 2011, soon after the passage of the 2010 Constitution. It has served us well, especially where, Mr. Speaker, this House may unnecessarily delay the approval of a nominee. But on the other hand, also, Mr. Speaker, it puts a lot of pressure on Parliament, Mr. Speaker, to rush the vetting or confirmation process of nominees. I sympathize with our colleagues in the National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, who have been faced with a task of undertaking a confirmation of 22 cabinet secretaries together with an attorney general in a record period of 14 days. Mr. Speaker, that period, I think, needed to be reviewed, Mr. Speaker. Even recruitment of IEBC commissioners, Mr. Speaker, the recruitment panel is given 90 days, Mr. Speaker, because you need to get information from some of Chapter 6 commissions like EACC. You need to get information from the DPP, from the DCI, Mr. Speaker. I think we need to amend this piece of legislation, Mr. Speaker, and give Parliament at least a period of 90 days, Mr. Speaker. If we retain 14 days, it will be reduced to a matter of National Assembly or the Senate just ticking boxes. And, Mr. Speaker, we know how houses, houses that do confirmations, how detailed they are. You know, if you go to the U.S., Mr. Speaker, out of about 118 nominees to the Supreme Court, the Senate of United States of America, Mr. Speaker, has rejected 37 nominees because they are so detailed, Mr. Speaker. They look at not just the integrity of the candidate, but even your conduct. You remember there is a judge who was rejected on account of an article he wrote in 1964 opposing the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that was extending liberties to black Americans. And because of that article, Mr. Speaker, he was rejected. I know for a fact that those who have been nominated to serve as cabinet secretaries in the U.S., about 8 have faced rejection, Mr. Speaker. And 9, the various presidents have been forced to withdraw the nomination. I remember the case of Senator John Tower of Texas, Mr. Speaker, who had been nominated by President Bush. But when it came to the public that he was a heavy drunkard, Mr. Speaker, the president was forced to withdraw the nomination, Mr. Speaker. I remember the case of Zubayd, nominated by Bill Clinton in 1993, Mr. Speaker. And when information came to the floor of the Senate House that she had employed an illegal immigrant who had no papers and that she had evaded paying statutory deductions to the government because she didn't want that information to go to the public, her nomination was rejected, Mr. Speaker, by the Senate. So that is how high houses that do confirmations have put the bar, Mr. Speaker. I remember that Andrew Johnson, who was president in 1800, Mr. Speaker, he faced an impeachment before the Senate, and he asked his Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, to resign and defend him during the impeachment. The Attorney General then, Andrew Stanbury, Mr. Speaker, he resigned. He defended President Johnson ably. Once Johnson went through the impeachment process in the Senate, he reappointed Henry to take his position back as Attorney General. But the Senate said, we can't play ping-pong games. If you want to resign and go to private practice, resign, go and do private practice. And his nomination was rejected on the basis that he did not show commitment to serving in that office. So this process, Mr. Speaker, is so critical, and it is important that we as a House raise the bar. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we abuse this power of vetting and confirming nominees, next time you hear there is a constitutional review process, the way I had a proposal that Kenya should have a convention to look at the 2010 Constitution, this power, Mr. Speaker, can easily be taken away from us. So we need to do the right thing, make sure that we build public confidence on the process, make sure that the process is meaningful, Mr. Speaker, so that we retain this power as a House, because it's very, very important, Mr. Speaker. It is one of the best concepts of a country that has adopted a limited government, Mr. Speaker, because it means the executive can propose a nominee, but if that nominee does not meet the bill, it will be, that nominee can be rejected, Mr. Speaker. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I don't think it serves this House and the country well for us to continue doing joint vetting by members of National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, health is a devolved function, Mr. Speaker. We should look at the process of vetting, Mr. Speaker, so that on positions like this one of Director General for Health, Mr. Speaker, the vetting should be undertaken by the Senate. There are so many offices, Mr. Speaker, including the office of Cabinet Secretary, where the vetting is undertaken by the National Assembly without any reference to this House, Mr. Speaker. So we need to, as a House, revisit this process, Mr. Speaker, so that we demarcate roles for the two houses. Mr. Speaker, I was very impressed when I listened to this nominee. He's a person who has vast experience on health matters. He's a trained medic. Mr. Speaker, graduated from University of Nairobi. It's unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that we have subjected this Kenyan to be in an acting position for 5 years, Mr. Speaker. I want to ask the executive, Mr. Speaker, not to subject professionals to the anxiety of being in an acting position, Mr. Speaker, for more than 5 years. In fact, it is bad practice, it's a bad human resource practice, Mr. Speaker, to keep somebody in an acting capacity for 5 years. I hope this is the last we are seeing of a case like this, Mr. Speaker, where we deny a very qualified Kenyans a chance of serving in full capacity in a position where he is well qualified. So as he takes over, Mr. Speaker, we hope that he is going to ensure that Kenyans get access to very quality health care services, Mr. Speaker, from our hospitals, Mr. Speaker. We have, though this is not directly under his docket, but he should be able to liaise with the NHIF, Mr. Speaker, so that the implementation of SHIF that is meant to benefit our people at their counties can be realized, Mr. Speaker. We went through the documentations, and I don't want to belabor this point, Mr. Speaker. I want to assure the country that this is a man of integrity, Mr. Speaker. The Office of Director of Public Prosecution confirmed to the committee, Mr. Speaker, that there are no pending prosecutions against this Kenyan. Ethics and Corruption Commission, Mr. Speaker, confirmed that they have no investigations that are ongoing against this particular nominee. Mr. Speaker, it's important for all Kenyans to pay their taxes, Mr. Speaker. The Constitution is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that if you are not a patriotic Kenyan who pays taxes, then you should not be given a chance to serve the country. Kenya Revenue Authority, Mr. Speaker, confirmed to us that a moth is up to date on his tax obligations. Mr. Speaker, there are people who went to school. They were assisted by the government through help. Their fees was paid by the government. But, Mr. Speaker, they have never paid back that loan to assist other Kenyans. And we were very keen as a committee, Mr. Speaker, to confirm whether a moth who was assisted by the government, was given loan through help, went to University of Nairobi. We were very keen to confirm whether he had cleared his loan. And I want to assure the House, Mr. Speaker, that his record is clear. He produced a certificate from help, and he confirmed that his loan is not in arrears. He does not have any cases pending with DCI, and he is a very impartial Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. He doesn't belong to any political party. He is a dedicated Kenyan who wants to serve, whether you belong to Azimio, whether you belong to UDA. Him is a technocrat who wants to serve Kenyans without any discrimination. So I'm assuring honorable members that this nominee is not a member of any political party. In terms of his financial probity and integrity, Mr. Speaker, you can confirm a nominee, Mr. Speaker, who brings you baggage, who has a lot of debts, who is going to join the public service to look for money to clear his many debts out there, Mr. Speaker. It's important, Mr. Speaker, as a House, when we are approving a nominee, you also look at his finances, Mr. Speaker. Are you bringing somebody on board, Mr. Speaker, who is coming with baggage? But I'm happy to report to the House, Mr. Speaker, that on the case of a moth, he produced a certificate from Credit Reference Bureau, confirmed that his debts are well managed, Mr. Speaker. He has a loan, Mr. Speaker, but that is taken care of. Like any Kenyan, you need to borrow to advance yourself, but he doesn't have any loan defaults. So he's a guy we can hold in high esteem. will serve us well, and have no hesitation in seconding his nomination to go and serve us in the as a Director General for Health. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I hope as the National Assembly concludes its vetting, Mr. Speaker, they will abide by the provisions of Article 130 of the Constitution so that we have ethnic and regional diversity. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are very litigious. In the history of this country, for the first time, Mr. Speaker, we have seen situations where the courts have nullified 2 finance acts, Mr. Speaker. So we need to be careful as we undertake our vetting or confirmation of our CSS, Mr. Speaker. We need to ensure that we take care of regional and ethnic diversity, Mr. Speaker. And I hope His Excellency the President will very soon address the issue of imbalances on permanent principal secretaries. So, Speaker, people like Pokomos, where Mkatana comes from, they don't have a permanent secretary, they don't have a cabinet secretary. Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, where I come from, we don't have a principal secretary, we don't have a cabinet secretary. You go to Kuria, they have 2 constituencies, Mr. Speaker. There is no principal secretary, no cabinet secretary. The same with the Taitas, Mr. Speaker. We need to build a Kenya where all of us have a sense of belonging, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't mean, Mr. Speaker, that if you come from a small county like Nyamira, where you have 4 constituencies, that you cannot rise to be a cabinet secretary or a principal secretary, Mr. Speaker. One of the most successful cabinet secretaries, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, hailed from Nyamira, Mr. Speaker. So we need, Mr. Speaker, to see the face of Kenya in our executive, Mr. Speaker. So this idea of a broad-based government, Mr. Speaker, should extend to principal secretaries, Mr. Speaker. Those who have been lucky to get cabinet secretaries should not again benefit from the position of principal secretaries, Mr. Speaker. If Kisii County, for example, has gotten position of cabinet secretary, let Nyamira benefit with a position of principal secretary. This cake belongs to all of us. We can share it, and all of us can feel happy and appreciate the beauty of being a Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. With those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I second this report. Thank you.
Now, honorable members, I rise to propose the question that the Senate adopts the joint report of the Standing Committee on Health of the Senate and the Departmental Committee of Health of the National Assembly on the approval of a nominee for appointment as Director General for Health, laid on the table of the Senate on Thursday, 1st of August 2024, and further that, pursuant to Section 16(2) of Health Act Cap 241 and Section 8, subsection 2 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, approves. Majority Leader and Majority Whip, you may take your seats. And pursuant to Section 8(2) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, approves the nomination of Dr. Patrick Omwanda Amov, EBS, for appointment as the Director General for Health. Now, honorable members, I will allow members to contribute if they have any comments on the motion that we have just proposed for debate, and I've seen this interest from among the members. I'll allow Senator Mungatana, Danson Buya, to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to, on the onset, congratulate the Committee for Health in Senate for the good work they have done. Mr. Speaker, I have a special respect for members of the legal profession and the health profession, medical doctors, and other professions who, from the very early stage, make a decision that they will stick with public service, and they grow in public service all the way to high positions. Mr. Speaker, some of us had those kind of opportunities when we were younger, but we made decision to go into private practice. And Mr. Speaker, I look at a lot of successful medical doctors who went to private practice and made a lot of money. But I also juxtapose that against Dr. Patrick Amoth, who started as a medical intern, Mr. Speaker, became a superintendent, became in charge of Kiambu District Hospital. He rose all the way, Mr. Speaker, at the national level to head the Public Health Directorate, where he was in charge of the strategy, public health strategy that was supposed to provide good health services to all the 47 counties in Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, we are talking about a dedicated public servant whom we should support, and we should have supported much earlier. Mr. Speaker, how can we keep a public servant so dedicated from the days of his youth to this time at an acting position for 4 years, since 2019 up to today? Mr. Speaker, I think we have wronged this dedicated public servant. And I pray that that should not be repeated. Mr. Speaker, when he succeeded John Masasabi, the last substantive director general, he stayed in that position for 4 years. He kept on doing what he should be doing now, substantively. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to speak to this issue of acting position. I think the government needs to up its game, both at the national and at county level. When someone is in an acting capacity, Mr. Speaker, they don't fully exercise the authority. They are susceptible to cartels. They are susceptible to manipulation, even susceptible to people who tell them to do the wrong things because they are acting. They are not quite sure whether they will be confirmed or not confirmed. And Mr. Speaker, I want to cascade it to realities as senators. We know that many governors are very, very good at putting people, particularly chief officers, in an acting capacity so that they are able to tell them do this and do the other. And those people do not have security in their jobs, and they are hoping that they will be the ones to be confirmed. And Mr. Speaker, we must bring a law that will stop any governor or any officer in public sector, both at the national and at the local government level, at the county government level, from making public servants stay in an acting capacity for too long, Mr. Speaker, so that these public servants can be able to deal with their offices substantively. Mr. Speaker, I am going to focus on some of the duties that this Director General for Health needs to look at. If you look at the duties that he's supposed to undertake, and I hope he's listening to me, don't be a failure in this ministry and hide behind the PS and hide behind the Cabinet Secretary. We have had a situation here in Kenya where a whole Inspector General of Police, an IG, which to me The director for health, public health, is like an IG in the ministry, the equivalent, who kept quiet when the situation in Kenya was deteriorating, security situation. We never saw him on television. We never saw him talking to people. And the country was going south. Mr. Speaker, we want to see a strong Director General. A Director General who will not be stationed in Nairobi, moving around in the shadow of the Cabinet Secretary. You are supposed to be an advisor to the Cabinet Secretary. Yes, an advisor to the government. But look, amongst your duties, you are supposed to also be an advisor to all county governments and the national government. So you should not be staying in Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, for you to advise the Cabinet Secretary and to advise the government properly on matters health, you should be out there listening and hearing and finding out what is happening on the ground. Mr. Speaker, the Director General for Health during the COVID time in the US, some doctor called Fanucci or something, if I remember well, he was always on TV, Mr. Speaker, always explaining things. He would go to Congress and explain public health policies. He would go and explain to people whatever the national government is thinking. He would try to create measures that would try to align even state health policies with what the national government was doing. He was present. Of course, later on, he has been questioned on some of the measures that he had recommended to the public in the US. But he was there at the time that he was required. We expect the public, the Director General, to be present to the public. Mr. Speaker, like right now, we have been hearing about a disease called Mpox. We have been hearing that it has crossed over the border into Kenya. We have been hearing and even seeing pictures circulating in social media that the first case has been spotted. And Mr. Speaker, we see pictures of horrible skin infection, and we are being told through social media that that is Mpox. And yet, the Ministry of Health, we have not had anything. Even him as an acting Director General, Dr. Patrick Amoth, in this one, you have not been heard at all. Don't be an absentee landlord. Come out and speak to Kenyans. This is what you are employed to do. Don't sit and hide there. One of the responsibilities for you as you are taking over this position is for you to come and tell Kenyans about infectious diseases. If you look at what you are supposed to do, infectious diseases in Kenya, and telling people how we can prevent infectious diseases coming from other countries into our nation. Now we're being told about this Mpox. Now you have left me, Senator Mungatana, my children, my constituents, my voters, and all my associates at the mercy of social media. Nobody is speaking about this thing. And you are there, even if you are in an acting capacity. Listen to me. Get out of the shadows of cabinet secretaries, the shadows of politicians. Come out and do your duty. Let us know we have a Director General for Health so that we are able to hear and to know where you stand officially, technically where you stand on issues. If this is fake news, then let me hear from my Director General for Health that there is no Mpox, that this thing is not there. But if it is there, let me hear what I'm supposed to tell our people. What are the preventive measures I'm supposed to do? We want the culture of top public servants who speak on technical issues to be established that when you come to speak, you speak so that we can believe you. Don't hide. Don't hide. Don't hide behind ministers. Don't hide behind PSs. Come out and speak on issues. Mr. Speaker, on this score, I must say, I am disappointed because the person who is acting now has not come to speak on this very crucial issue. Mr. Speaker, during the flooding in Tana River County and other counties that were affected by flooding, it is the time that we needed to see Director General for Health, even though you are in an acting capacity, coming out to talk to people, telling us, now we have this risk of this kind of diseases. Let Kenyans look at you to be the doctor you are. It should not be PSs and CSs alone speaking on policy, and they never trained in that area. When there is an outbreak of dengue fever, when there is an outbreak of malaria or what, let us see you taking the microphone and speaking to us. This is what we want to see, because this is your responsibility. Kenyans want an authority. And one of the duties you have is the internship program. It's supposed to be fully under the Director for Health, the Director General for Health. We have had complaints about how people are posted, how people are being paid, how all these things. It is in your docket to come and tell us as Kenyans, what do we do with our children who have qualified? What are we supposed to do with them? And they are supposed to do that internship for them to become licensed to practice. So, Mr. Speaker, what I'm trying to say is, Dr. Patrick Amoth, it is not enough that you have all these nice qualifications, which we thank you for. It is not enough that you have all this experience, which we are grateful for, as we confirm you into this position. The people of Tana River, they don't know you, because you never come out to talk about anything. So just get out. Stop being this doctor thing of, me, I'm a scientist and I will hide, my work will speak for myself. Be like Dr. Halwale. Make noise until everybody listens and hears what you are saying. Because we need public servants to speak on technical issues. Mr. Speaker, I will belabor that point. We need public servants to speak on technical issues so that everybody does his work. As a senator, I'm supposed to do my work here in this house and out there. You are supposed to do your work where you are. It is very wrong, Mr. Speaker, for us to pay these people and to give them positions, and they are not doing what they are supposed to do. I was not part of that. I'm not in that health committee. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not enough to just say, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I didn't do that. You need to say what you're doing so that we as Kenyans can have full confidence in you as a new person who is taking that position. And, Mr. Speaker, I need to say it here that one of the senators here who was speaking said, this man does not belong to this political party or other what, so he will give fair opportunity or service to every Kenyan. I think that's the wrong way to approach these matters. When you are being asked to take up public positions, we are not asking you to forfeit your Christian beliefs or Hindu beliefs or heathen beliefs, whatever it is. We are not asking you to do that. We are also not asking you to stop saying you belong to UDA or you belong to whatever other political party. Your belonging or not belonging is not the issue. The issue is, are you capable of doing the work that is before you? And, Mr. Speaker, we need to accept that people can have different opinions, but when it comes to work, people must be able to execute the duties which we have selected them or elected them to do. And very quickly, I want to mention, Mr. Speaker, that a lot of controversy is coming around the nomination process and the vetting process, and my colleagues have mentioned about it. I hope the other motion will come, but just quickly to mention, Mr. Speaker, there was a cabinet secretary for transportation in Obama's administration, first administration. He was called Ray LaHood. And Ray LaHood resigned at some point from Obama's administration because he said he wanted to pursue more lucrative opportunities outside government. So we need to have honest people who will say, up to here, now I've got children going to university, I need to earn more money, and I can't do this job, I don't want to do this job, I want to go and look for money outside. Let us have that kind of thing, honesty of that level. Mr. Speaker, also, that man was a Republican, and Obama was a president who was a Democrat. He was a cabinet nominee in a Democratic president, but he was a Republican. But that didn't mean that the Republicans all of a sudden and the Democrats had merged and they were forming government. Kenyans must start accepting that if we took the US system, all these nominees that are coming, they are coming as individuals. We are not merging political parties. In fact, it will be very untidy to have that kind of a situation. Many secretaries of states in the US, and it's the system we are copying here, many of them, Mr. Speaker, they have served in different administrations and with different presidents, and they belong to different political parties. And it did not matter, because, Mr. Speaker, when the president is picking his judges, when the president is picking his military defense council, when the president is speaking his cabinet, Mr. Speaker, he's acting as the head of state. He's acting like the person who is supposed to be in charge of this country everywhere. And when we are appointing judges or chief of defense forces, we don't ask which political party you belong to. The cabinet now in Kenya, people must start accepting the cabinet is just like the military council. It's just like the commissions here that we are appointing here. We don't ask people which political parties they belong to. We must start accepting that people from different political persuasions will serve in the cabinet, because in Kenya, that is how it is. So, Mr. Speaker, my prayer is that as you go into this job, Dr. Patrick Amoth, may you do it as a Kenyan, and may you come out full force to be heard. May the people of Tana River also know you. And I am also booking you on the floor of this Senate to come and visit so that you see what is happening as you advise the Cabinet Secretary for Health and the national government. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Mungatana, for your contribution. Honorable members, we don't seem to have members interested in contributing, and I will call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the mover to respond. Allow me to thank colleagues for their contributions. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to congratulate Senator Patrick Amoth for this appointment, and allow me to congratulate Dr. Patrick Amoth for this appointment. I also wish to congratulate the committees of the two houses for making the best pick that they could have made. And with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, you want me to continue? Okay, fine. I thought I thought you wanted us to vote. So we want to vote. Mr. Speaker, before I conclude my response, I have received a gracious request from my daughter here by my own brother called Karen. I'll give her 2 minutes to make...
Senator Boni, Senator Boni, remember earlier on I had indicated that there was no one interested, but I assume that courtesy of your interest on this matter, probably Senator Nyamu has equally been inspired.
She was threatening to impeach me as...
Very well.
I got scared.
You will share your time to reply.
Yes.
So that Senator Nyamu can just speak to the report and allows, or rather permits you to conclude your reply to this motion.
Yes. So I give you 2 minutes before I respond, before we vote.
Senator Nyamu, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the issue of public health is one of interest, and particularly even in Nairobi County. Mr. Speaker, I rise to contribute to this motion on the confirmation of the nominee for for the Director General for Public Health, Dr. Patrick Amoth. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Amoth has a very impressive background in a very impressive education background in medicine and public health. He has also demonstrated that he has the knowledge and the experience, having acted for 4 years in the same position, Mr. Speaker. And he has also contributed, he has had major contributions to the public health sector in the country. He has contributed to the strategies and the existing health policies over time. He has also demonstrated leadership in medical crisis during, for example, the medical pandemic of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, he has also gotten the endorsement of both health committees in both houses, confirming his suitability for the position, Mr. Speaker. And what does the future of medicine and of the public health hold under Dr. Amoth, Mr. Speaker? During his interview, I saw him commit to innovation and improving the sector, which is very important because the health sector is changing rapidly every other day internationally, and we will need someone who is progressive to adopt with the innovation and all that, Mr. Speaker. He has also committed to address the challenges that we face today, the access to health by the public, the education of health, Mr. Speaker, and also the challenge of the availability of the health services, Mr. Speaker. And with those few remarks, because of time, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion. Amen. Thank you.
Senator Boni, your time now is available to close on your reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was just congratulating my colleague in the profession, and I'm glad that a man who has been forced to act for 5 years is finally getting the job. I believe, had he not been acting, the crisis that the country went through in terms of the strike by medical workers, maybe it would have been averted or solved faster. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Amoth is not only a medical specialist, but he has also undergone training in Israel on management of health management systems. This kind of training is just what we need if we are going to build a proper policy that is currently lacking in the devolved structure of managing health, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the interest of time, may I use this last minute to request the chair that I reply and I beg to request that the question be put to another date under the standing order number 66.3. Thank you. 66.3. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Boni. And pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 66.3, putting of the question as regards this particular motion is deferred to the next sitting of this House. And now, honorable members, let's rise. Honorable Senators, it's now 6:30 p.m., time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, 7th of August 2024 at 9:30 a.m.
The quorum has been achieved. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast brought to you by Paybill in partnership with KBC. My name is Kamche Menza. Good afternoon.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Next order, clerk.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
The Honorable Senator Kio Omtata. Okay.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to read a petition to the Senate concerning the compensation benefits of police officers injured in the line of duty. We, the undersigned citizens, Kenya, and affected police officers serving in the National Police Service Commission, draw the attention of the Senate to the following. 1, that the Work Injury Benefit Act, in brackets WIBA, provides for compensation of an employee by the employer in cases where the employee is involved in an accident or dies while in the line of duty. 2, that police officers, just like any other civil servants, are also beneficiaries of this provision of the law. 3, that the National Police Service Commission, in brackets NPSC,
contracted the National Health Insurance Fund, in brackets NHIF, to insure all police officers between the years 2021 and 2022. 4, that once a police officer reports an injury incident to the station commander, due assessment is undertaken by both a personal doctor as well as doctors at the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services, in brackets DOSHS brackets. 5, that after assessment of the injury, the director of WIBA at DOSHS generates a demand for payment based on what the officer is awarded by the DOSHS doctors. 6, that a demand from WIBA 4 is sent to the police headquarters for the injured police officer to sign if he or she agrees with the benefits awarded. The signed WIBA 4 demand form is then referred to the National Health Insurance Fund, which provides the WIBA cover for police officers for payment. 7, that payment ought to be done within 90 days from the date the WIBA 4 demand form is generated and submitted for processing. 8, that since the year 2021, more than 400 injured police officers have not been paid their injury benefits after being assessed and awarded benefits in accordance with the procedure set above. 9, that some police officers have been totally incapacitated due to injuries sustained in the line of duty. 10, that some of these officers lost their arms and legs, which negatively impacted their lives and the lives of their families and dependents. 11, that added to the low pay, poor housing, erratic career progression, and hostile public attitudes and other occupational hazards that the police officers endure daily, the disregard of the injuries sustained in the line of duty makes it unbearable. 12, that both the National Police Service Commission and the National Hospital Insurance Fund have not explained why no officer out of the more than 400 victims has ever been compensated. 13, that to make matters worse, some injured police officers cannot access their files. 14, that cases of corruption have been cited, including where some officers were asked to be reassessed and others were asked to part with a percentage of their benefits before they could be paid. 15, that the injured officers have tried and failed to get the National Police Service Commission, the WIBA director, the DOSHS, and the NHIF CEO to intervene for the payments to be made. 16, that Mr. Dunston Kinyanjui, who was appointed as a representative of the police officers, has not given any coherent reasons why the benefits have not been paid. 17, that none of the issues raised herein are pending before any court of law or any other legal entity. Wherefore, your humble petitioners pray that the Senate of the Republic of Kenya intervenes with a view to 1, ensure that all the injured police officers are given fair treatment in terms of benefits payment, just like all other civil servants. 2, recommends that the WIBA and the DOSHS produce the list of all the injured police officers since the year 2021, detailing the name of each officer, nature of injury, time of injury, and the amount of compensation awarded. 3, recommends that the National Health Insurance Fund compensates the affected officers immediately. And your petitioners will ever pray. Presented to the Senate by Andrew Omtato Koiti, MP, Senator from Busia County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Now, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 238(1), I commit the petition to the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare for consideration. Now, in terms of Standing Order 238(2), the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the date of reading this prayer, which is today, to table its report in the Senate for consideration. The Senate shall thereafter consider the report of the committee. I thank you. Next order, Clerk.
Order number 5, papers.
Senator Faki, you're out of order. Why are you seeking a point of order when there's no senator on their feet? And I don't think he's... Proceed by calling the next order, Clerk. The Majority Leader, you may proceed to lay the papers.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, the 24th of July, 2024. This is the Office of the Controller of Budget, Annual Report and Financial Statements for the financial year 2022-2023. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
Statements pursuant to Standing Order 53(1). Senator Kavindu. That statement is dropped. Senator David Wakoli. Senator Professor Tom Ojanda, you have 4 statements. You may read all of them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 4 statements this afternoon. The first statement is on the employment of persons above the mandatory age, retirement age in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53(1) to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare regarding the employment of persons above the mandatory retirement age in Kisumu County. The Constitution of Kenya and the County Governments Act 2012 establishes the various apparatus and modalities a county must consider in employing persons in various positions. Further, according to the policy of the national government, except for a few exemptions such as the judiciary, the retirement age for categories of various civil servants was revised in 2009 and set at 60 years and 65 for those for different categories. The Public Service Commission also provides that once a public officer has attained the retirement age, the officer shall retire from the service with effect from the date of attaining the age. Despite all these provisions, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Kisumu County government has proceeded to employ in its ranks persons who are above the mandatory age in contravention of the law. In the statement, the county should, 1, state the county's policy on employing retirees, disclosing the number of individuals employed under this category, providing details of their contracts, job descriptions, and remuneration. 2, state the justification for hiring retirees over potentially more resourceful, younger candidates and Gen Zs, the process used for selecting the retirees, and the measures put in place to ensure that employing retirees does not hinder career advancement for younger employees or hinder effectiveness and impact of service delivery on the organization performance. And lastly, table a report assessing the retirees' skills, experience, and suitability for various positions. Mr. Speaker, my second statement is on the level of disaster preparedness in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Order 53 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations concerning the level of disaster preparedness in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, Kisumu County has been severely affected by floods, impacting on over 5,000 residents in the most recent incident. The county government should prioritize on disaster preparedness in its plans to safeguard the lives and property of the citizens. In the statement, the committee should, Mr. Speaker, 1, provide an overview of disaster preparedness mechanisms in Kisumu County, including plans, policies, resources, verifying whether at least 2% of the budget is allocated to the county emergency fund as per the PFM, and explain the utilization of funds from the year 2017 to date. 2, assess the existence and effectiveness of an early warning system for floods and landslides in Kisumu, stating whether flood mitigation measures such as drainage systems, flood barriers, and dike construction have been implemented in flood-prone areas, and providing a breakdown of the costs incurred. 3, describe how the county government coordinates with the national government, NGOs, and CBOs to enhance disaster preparedness and response efforts. 4th, evaluate the technical capacity and availability of trained personnel, equipment, and emergency shelters for flood-related incidents, and clarify whether there are measures in place to address the needs of vulnerable populations such as children, elderly persons, and persons with disabilities. Explain how the county government coordinates with the national government and other stakeholders to enhance preparedness. State the capacity of the county emergency response, including the availability of trained personnel and rescue teams and emergency shelters, if any, to respond to flood-related incidents. 7, state whether there are deliberate measures in place to address the needs of vulnerable populations, and how the county intends to integrate risk reduction and resilience building measures into CIDP processes, particularly in areas prone to floods. And lastly, state how often the disaster preparedness are reviewed and updated to reflect the changing environmental regime caused by climate change. Mr. Speaker, my third statement is on the state of stadia facilities in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations regarding the state of stadia facilities in Kisumu County. Article 186(1) of the Constitution of Kenya, read together with Article 4H of the Part 2 of the 4th Schedule of the Constitution, devolves sports activities and construction and maintenance of facilities, including stadia, to the county governments. Mr. Speaker, the Sports Act 2013 further provides that county government shall establish, manage, and develop sports facilities within the county. In the statement, the committee should report the current state of stadia and sports facilities in Kisumu County and state whether there are plans to upgrade the existing stadia facilities to meet national and international standards, and if any, state the specific steps taken. 2, state whether there are ongoing maintenance and rehabilitation projects aimed at improving infrastructure of existing stadia, and provide details of the scope and progress of these projects and any budgetary allocations, projected timelines, completion, and tenders. State the funds allocated to the county budget for maintenance and improvement of stadia in Kisumu County for the financial years 2013 to date. Provide details of any plans underway to construct new stadia. And lastly, outline the measures in place to ensure transparency and accountability in the utilization of resources. Mr. Speaker, lastly, my last statement, and Mr. Speaker, this comes against the background that on the health facilities, this is on the upgrade of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital to a level 6 facility. And this is important, Mr. Speaker, sir, given that now we are in government. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health on the need to upgrade Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital in Kisumu County to a level 6 teaching and referral hospital. Mr. Speaker, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga is currently classified as a level 5 hospital and is under the stewardship of the county government of Kisumu, providing vital medical and health services to residents across more than 10 counties. It is therefore time, Mr. Speaker, that this facility be upgraded. The facility serves a combined population exceeding 10 million people. In the statement, the committee should, Mr. Speaker, initiate the necessary measures and steps needed to upgrade JORTH from a level 5 to a level 6 teaching and referral hospital, and further, the hospital be accorded access to budgetary resources and medical equipment and human resources attached to that status. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, recommend policy and legal framework needed to facilitate and realize the upgrade of JORTH to a level 6 facility. Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I note, now ODM is in government, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Hamida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My statement is on recent attacks on journalists covering the Occupy protests by Gen Z in Kenya by police officers. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee of National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations on the recent attacks on journalists covering the Occupy protests organized by Gen Z in Kenya. In the statement, the committee should provide detailed accounts of the reported attacks on journalists, including any physical assaults, verbal threats, arrests and detention, destruction and equipment and other forms of intimidation that have taken place during the protests, including also alleged attempts to muzzle media houses from covering the protests. Number 2, conduct an investigation into the role of police service in these attacks, including any evidence of excessive use of force or failure to protect journalists in the line of duty. Number 3, highlight steps that the National Police Service has taken to ensure the safety and protection of journalists covering protests and other public events in the future. And number 4, state the actions being taken to hold the perpetrators accountable for their actions against journalists, including the legal proceedings or disciplinary measures. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wakoli.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. A request for statement on the state of Chwele Chicken Slaughterhouse in Bungoma County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding the state of Chwele Chicken Slaughterhouse in Bungoma County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, report on the current state of Chwele Chicken Slaughterhouse in Bungoma County, providing a detailed inventory of all county government assets at the slaughterhouse. 2, provide details on the revenue from the slaughterhouse that has accrued to the county government since its operationalization, as well as the average number of poultry slaughtered per day. 3, evaluate the socioeconomic impact of the slaughterhouse on the residents of Bungoma County, stating the number of residents employed as well as the number of farmers that supply poultry to the slaughterhouse. 4, clarify whether the leasing process of the slaughterhouse was competitive, and if not, provide a justification for the same. And 5, provide details on the lease of the slaughterhouse to include the details on the company that was awarded the lease, the cost of lease, the handing over process, as well as the memorandum of understanding signed between the county government and the said company. Honorable Speaker, my next statement on supplementary budget of over 148 million approved by the County Assembly of Bungoma County towards the hosting of the 2024 Madaraka Day celebrations. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Finance Budget regarding the supplementary budget of over 148 million approved by the County Assembly of Bungoma County for the financial year 2023-2024 that allocated funds towards hosting of the 2024 Madaraka Day celebration in Bungoma County. In the statement, the committee should 1. State the total amount budgeted and allocated for the 2024 Madaraka Day celebrations held on 1st June 2024 in Bungoma County, providing a breakdown of contributions from the national and county governments towards facilitating the event. 2. Explain why Bungoma County Assembly approved a supplementary budget of over 148 million to fund a national government event and provide a breakdown of how these funds were utilized. And 3. Explain how procurement towards facilitating the event was conducted, stating the procurement method used, and further provide details of the companies that were awarded tenders, the tender sum of each tender awarded, as well as the bill of quantities for works procured for the national event. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Kavindu, your statement has been brought back after having explained yourself. Proceed to read your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My statement is on cases of reported bodies dumped and retrieved from Kware area, Embakasi South constituency of Nairobi County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee of National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding cases of reported bodies dumped and retrieved in Kware area in Embakasi South constituency in Nairobi County. In the statement, the committee should 1. Conduct investigations into the cause of the deaths of the 42 women whose bodies were dumped and retrieved in the Kware area, Nairobi South constituency in Nairobi County. 2. Provide information in the identities and origins of the 42 women, including whether their families had reported them missing. 3. Explain why the alleged serial killers' heinous acts were not went unnoticed, and why the identity remains unknown to the residents of the neighboring of the Kware area, despite the murders being committed from the year 2022 to date. 4. Clarify why the government was not aware of the matter until it was reported in the media. Provide an update on the status of the investigations and outline how the families of the victims will obtain justice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next order. Now, honorable senators, allow me to rearrange today's order paper, of course, for the convenience of the House, pursuant to Standing Order 45-2. We move to prosecute order number 16, and thereafter we will move to order number 27. Once we are done with those two orders, and still there'll be time, we will prosecute any other order that will be available at that time. Clerk, proceed to call that order.
Order number 16, motion. Report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominees on behalf of the county governments to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, SRC.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move order number 16, being the motion on the report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on the Senate nominees on behalf of the county governments to the position of member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Mr. Speaker, sir, before I proceed, I wish to seek for clarification from the chair. Mr. Speaker, in our report which we laid earlier, yesterday, we indicated the three nominees, Madam Lynette Washiali Muganda as number 1 in the score, followed by Mohammed Aden Abdi as number 2 by score. Before coming to this conclusion, Mr. Speaker, sir, we had been confronted in the committee with a challenge. One of the candidates was knocked off, and the reason for being knocked off is not because he didn't qualify. Mr. Speaker, he was actually candidate number 1. However, we were forced to knock him off because when due diligence was done on his testimonials, a letter came from the University of Nairobi stating that the degree which he had uttered to the committee was not genuine. For that reason, Mr. Speaker, we dropped the name of that candidate and proceeded and formed the committee, the report on which we were agreed in the majority. Mr. Speaker, minutes before I prepared to move the motion, we have received yet another report from the Office of the Clerk, marked to us. And I have found, Mr. Speaker, that it is a letter from the University of Nairobi, which is now rescinding its earlier letter to the committee, and now confirming that the degree certificate from the University of Nairobi is indeed genuine. Mr. Speaker, for this reason, I would like you to guide us, because if then the certificate is genuine, it means we have no grounds to knock that candidate from the list, and therefore his name should be before the House. So I appeal to you, Chair, you give us guidance, because the matter has since left the committee. There's nothing the committee can do. The matter is now in plenary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni, you may proceed to table that later before I give guidance on the same.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I table the letter from the University of Nairobi, being a letter in reference to Abdurrahman Hassan and signed by Mr. Emmanuel Mumba, Registrar of Academics, University of Nairobi. A copy of the letter. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mngatana, what is your intervention?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you consider giving us direction on this matter, I feel that an injustice has been carried out on a person who qualified and was left out because of a mistake that was caused by an institution. Now, logically, the institution has tried to restitute by correcting the injustice that was visited upon that applicant, whom I do not know because even the name has not been given to us. But, Mr. Speaker, I would propose that you consider allowing the very Honorable Senator Khalwale to move the motion that is on the order paper in an amended form so that that other name can be included, Mr. Speaker. And then the three names can be forwarded if the Senate approves the motion. The three names can be forwarded for consideration for appointment by the other authority. I think that would serve the justice so that we don't visit injustice twice by the institution and then another institution to exclude that person. I submit, Mr. Speaker, for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Onyonka Richard.
Mr. Speaker, just as much as I support what Honorable Mungatana has said, the only request I wanted to make is your guidance on whether, from what Honorable Khalwale has said, what does that letter actually say? Is the university making the apology that they made an error, or was the document just produced as evidence? Oh, then I understand. Okay.
Senator Enoch Wambua, what's your intervention?
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, where I sit, this is also a serious issue. Serious because I do understand that the committee had already tabled its report and that the moving of the motion was subsequent to a report, which then, if that letter is admissible, I don't know, I've not seen the letter, then it would follow that the committee made a decision on account of misleading information. The source of the misleading information has attempted to correct that position. But from our traditions, customs, and practices, once a committee tables a report, I don't know what avenue is available to reopen the report. The only window that I see myself is in the motion. Senator Mungatana is proposing something, I don't know how possible that is in the immediate, that Senator Khalwale can move the motion in an amended version. My understanding of the practices is that decision of amending the motion cannot be asked to make on the floor. It has to be a committee decision with guidance from the Speaker. The Speaker, I am not helping the situation in any way. I'm just also getting confused in it. But I think the Speaker, then you are reasoned ruling on this one. Perhaps you give us a date that you're going to rule on this after even determining the authenticity of the letter that has come. Then you can do a reasoned ruling and guide the House on how to process this matter. The Speaker, I submit.
Yes, Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also concur with Senator Wambua. All our universities, including University of Nairobi, where I did my master's, I believe the letter can only be admissible if it is accompanied by the graduation booklet from the university. Otherwise, the letter can be done by anybody to purport that it's coming from the university. The booklet with the name of this particular candidate should accompany the letter, Honorable Speaker.
Now, honourable senators, I will give my ruling on this letter on Thursday next week. So whether the procedure to adopt will depend very much on the ruling that I'll be delivering on Tuesday next week. Let's rest the matter at that. We now move to Order 27. Order 27.
Order number 27, the Fire and Rescue Services Professionals Bill, Senate Bills number 55 or 2023. Second reading.
Senator Mohammed Abbas Sheikh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to move the Fire and Rescue Services Professional Bill number 55, 2023, be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, sir, the principal objective of the bill is to ensure the delivery of high-quality, professional, and standardized fire and rescue services across all counties through the regulation of fire and rescue services professional in Kenya. This is geared towards reducing public safety, protecting lives and property. Honorable Speaker, the importance of this fire and rescue service bill cannot be overstated. These men and women risk their lives every day to protect our lives and minimize the devastation impact of fire, accidents, and emergencies. Honorable Speaker, as you are aware, this country has faced many incidences of fire. A few months ago, we had the worst fire incident that was witnessed in Kenya, the most tragic fire disasters occasioned by a gas explosion in Mpakasi. Had we had enough trainings, people trained, and regulation in place, I think we'll have minimized that disaster. This disaster is actually important, of vital importance of well-functioning fire and rescue services sector. If there were any, then things would have been minimized. This calls to action for us legislators to put in place the necessary framework and resources to ensure that all incidences can be prevented and that they do not occur or they can be minimized, the risks can be minimized fully. Honorable Speaker, having said that, as you are aware, in most instances, the fire and emergency issues, the disaster issues is actually devolved. But however, facilities are actually in poor state in most of the counties. Emergency preparedness is not there. And as a result, even today, as you look around here, this is like Parliament here, God forbid, if there will be any fire. You can see no institution, no vehicles or no facilities that are available within reach of this station. Because in the past, we used to have, in such places, fire vehicles stationed next to the station. We used to have, rescue services. We used to have some small tanks for fire extinguishers in every place. But of course, as you work, even the big building there, you will hardly see anything to do with the fire services by providing, anything for rescue services or emergency issues. Honorable Speaker, there is no proper trained personnel in this country. We have a small training institute for the Nairobi county, but even that itself is not fully functional. And therefore, I think with having this kind of bill, we will be able at least to have regulated services and be able to control emergencies on fire. Honorable Speaker, some of the most ugly incidents that took place in this country, beside the one for the Embakasi one, in 2001, there was a fire outbreak in a certain school in Ukambani called Shengulu Mixed Secondary Schools, where 60 students lost their lives. Similarly, the fire occurred in Bombululu Girls in Kwale. The 25 students lost their lives. And 2011, massive fire at Makuru, Sanai, caused by oil leakage from a Kenya pipeline, Tanga, resulted in over 100 deaths. In Nakuma downtown in 2009, in Nakuma downtown, there was a uncovered generator that led to fire and loss of 29 lives and destroyed the properties worth millions of shillings. In the same year, fuel tanker overturned in a place somewhere in Molo called Sawagan, causing fire that claimed the lives of 113 people, and many people injured, and men lost, and most of the Kenyans today are still living injured, and some of them died. You know, what also happens is that in Kukomba, almost every year, we have fire that destroys a lot of property. But at any one given time, the disasters or any fire outbreak, we have no prepared interventions. Honorable Speaker, the above fire disasters, coupled with the recurring fire incidents in the schools and market